Welcome to hour number 3, our third and final on the penultimate Saturday of this 2024 college football regular season. It is College Football Today, live right here on SportsGrid. He is the mastermind of the college football pigskin. That is Joe Lisi. He is OK Dubs. That is Kevin Walsh. And I am Ben Stevens. On this second to last Saturday, if you are in the hunt for a conference championship or a spot in that conference title matchup, your result today could mean everything. We've talked about the SEC. What is at stake in the Big Ten? Of course, we know the simultaneous kicks at 3:30 p.m. Eastern time today in those Big 12 battles. Now, to start our third and final hour, we focus on the ACC. Miami, one loss this year against Georgia Tech a few weekends ago. A bye week to get things figured out and to get things back on track. Lisi Guy, the Canes back at home today in South Florida. 24.5-point favorite against Wake Forest. We'll talk ACC implications in just a matter of moments. Let's start with the game. Wake, not great this year. Miami trying to figure things out and get back into the win column. Expected to do so rather comfortably. Just how easy is it for Miami today?
Well, I think it's easy in the sense I don't think they'll be threatened enough, but I do like the 24.5 with Wake Forest because their offense can move the football, putting up well over 27 points per game. Hank Bachmeier, a veteran quarterback, 14 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Wake Forest averaging 257 through the air, and they're pretty good on the road, 3-1 overall straight-up record. There's a lot of pressure on Miami, right, to actually win this game. And again, we've seen them play down to the level of comp earlier in the year. We saw it a couple weeks ago against Georgia Tech. They allowed Duke to go for 3.5 quarters before they pulled away. Now you're asking them to basically win by 4 touchdowns. I mean, that is a huge ask. Wake Forest still playing for bowl contention, right, to get to 6-6. Miami wins. Give me the 24.5. What I'm struggling with, guys, is the 67.5. Can we get there? Because both offenses statistically can get there, but Miami might play this a little bit closer, knowing that they have to win this game.
So I lean Miami. One thing that I noticed is a dropping number today has actually been Cam Ward's Heisman price. Yep. I think that must be people remembering that he's playing again for the first time in a week or so. He also, by the way, to me, should actually win the Heisman Trophy if the season ended today. But that's, again, we'll see how things play out. For me, I love Damian Martinez here. I think this is such a great spot to back what is one of the, remember when they brought in Ward, it was Ward and Martinez.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Right? And obviously I know what Ward has been. Damian got off to a really slow start. Before their first bye week, 6 games, 4.4 yards per carry. Mm-hmm. The last 4, 7.3 yards per carry, 96 per game. Now off another bye week against a Wake team. You think about comparable opponents. Ole Miss, Henry Parrish for $132. Clemson, Phil Maffa, over 100 yards as well. I think Martinez today, Ben, just absolutely smashes the 77.5. He got bell cow level work, and that because I don't love those complicated backfields. He got all the work against Georgia Tech. I think he's the guy way more than Fletcher.
And part of that reason, Joe, that I actually think the Hurricanes might approach 67.5 or help this game get there is because Miami knew that they were playing with a little bit of fire, perhaps, in the undefeated start. The Cardiac Canes, for a reason, a great second-half team, but slow starts in the opening half. Cannot and should not happen today against a Wake Forest defense that allows 282 passing yards per game. That's bottom 5 in all of college football. And to your point about Cam Ward, outside of the FSU game, that was an anomaly. 304 yards at bare minimum, multiple passing touchdowns in the 9 other games, 3+ passing touchdowns in 8 of the 9. What is Ward's number today against the Demon Deacs?
Yes.
357.5. It is one of the reasons I love Xavier Restrepo in that first half anytime touchdown prop. He's got 10 receiving scores this year, 4 in the last 2, because I do not expect Miami to try to battle back in the second half after a lackluster start. I think they start early and often.
Yeah, I think, man, again, 351.5?
Yeah, 57.5.
I mean, it's just, to me, he is. If I tell you he wins the ACC,
yes.
Does he still need help in that Gentry or Hunter lose football games?
Yeah, you see, I think the thing here's the I would put Ward definitely over Genti, in my opinion. He's been I mean, the best player on his team, and you can't even mention Miami at 9-1 without Cam Ward being in the conversation, right? You could say they might have 3 losses on the year if it wasn't for Cam Ward.
I would just argue you also could not mention Boise State at 9-1 without Ashton Genti on a historic pace.
Agreed, but I'm just saying the quarterback position for me, we hold so much value at the NFL and obviously college level and the Heisman as well that we haven't seen the love for the running backs just yet, right? I still think it's Hunter's. I really do. I mean, Hunter would have to fall off a cliff. I mean, the type of numbers that he's putting up, and defensively, too, goes unnoticed.
What I would say on Hunter, and this is where I'm trying because I'm trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
He is, again, the biggest star in the sport by, like, a lot. I wonder how much of his number is reflective of the handle that has been put on that versus what's going to happen. Because, man, I've been ear to the ground. I'm not saying there wouldn't be Hunter voters. There are also some people who are like, this kid's not in my Biletnikoff race. He's not the best corner in football. He's a star. We know that. But there are some, for lack of a better phrase, haters when it comes to Hunter. And I wonder if that price is more reflective of action than perception.
Plus 900, third best price to your point for Cam Ward. Travis Hunter minus 400. Ashton Genti, second best price sandwiched in between at plus 400. By the way, Wake Forest an underdog 6 times this year, 2-4 against the spread. Miami only has 2 wins entering week number 13 against teams above 500. Louisville, who got beat last week by Stanford, that blew my mind, and Duke. But the good thing for the Canes is they have covered in both of those wins, despite being just 3-3 against the spread in ACC play. Miami does control its own destiny to get to an ACC championship, and yet is not the undefeated team in the conference. That is SMU in conference action. Since suffering its only loss of the year, Joe, against BYU, the Stangs have won 7 straight. And as they enter this matchup, they have gone over in 5 of 6 ACC games, but they head to Charlottesville today against the Virginia team that has been a really good underdog this season. Double-digit spread in favor of SMU, who extended Rhett Lashley yesterday as well. Total 54.5, dropping ever so slightly on this Saturday. How competitive does this football game look today between SMU and UVA?
I think it's very competitive, and I went after SMU last week with Boston College catching it 17.5, 18. They were, fell behind 10-0 and then made it a game. Grayson James played very well, but his costly interception right before the half really cost them, in my opinion, the ball game. But again, Virginia can run the football. They're battle tested. They got the cover last week, fell behind, still battle for 4 quarters, but they play very disciplined defense. Don't give up a lot of chunk plays all that much playing at home. This line went from 9.5 to 10.5. Calandria in that offense, I think, can sustain enough. I think they're going to be in the number. They're fighting for bowl contention. I think potentially they could be a money line play as well.
Absolutely. I mean, they showed it against Pitt. I find the number to be stunning, actually. Guy, I know I do this stuff a lot, but, so I feel bad if anyone doesn't like it, but Notre Dame laid 21.5 at home to Virginia last week.
Yeah.
There's a 10-point gap between Notre Dame and SMU, and that doesn't factor in home field advantage when you start to move things through those type of numbers here. I think home field has been completely forgotten when we look at the way this number stacks up here. I think they should be closer to probably 7. This number's rising to 11.5.
Yeah.
I'm not scared. Tony Elliott's a monster. This guy rocks. I mean, this guy covers numbers. He's been doing it his entire time at UVA. He does it again here today.
3-1 against the number as an underdog. The Cavaliers this year, the only non-cover by the hook of that closing spread last week against the Irish. SMU wins today, or its season finale. They're into the ACC championship. Miami wins out. They'll see the Stangs in that ACC title game. Quarterback comparisons up next.
Chris Cyborg, 39 years of age. Larissa Pacheco, only 30. Cyborg 2 inches taller. Equal measurement on the arm reach for these women. Slightly longer legs for Chris Cyborg. Touch of the gloves, and we are underway in our co-main events. Cauliflower.
I don't know, it might be
beautiful.
What
a level.
big kick.
How did she take that? Pacheco just ate it.
Wow.
Measured and controlled in her breathing. Oh, nasty left hand snuck over the top for Cyborg. Pacheco. She will literally and figuratively smell blood in the water. Oh, there's a guillotine.
Another beautiful takedown, but she put herself right in harm's way. That is tight.
Good short elbow there.
Very nice.
An overhand right there from Cyborg. That was a solid right hand, meeting some punches.
Watch the back of the head, Chris. Watch the back of the head. First deep breath I've seen Larissa take in this fight. Just about 10 seconds ago. Oh, nice takedown.
Rolls through onto an ankle, maybe. 15 seconds, and we're going to see some wildness. Yeah, of course
Yes, we are. Both women landed there. They'll swing away to the final bell here.
9-46, I'll have it for the winner by unanimous decision. And now the PFL Superfights Women's Featherweight World Champion, Chris Cyborg.
The legend adds to her legacy. Chris Cyborg.
It is quarterback comparison time for this Week 13 Saturday slate around the country in college football, live here on College Football Today. And, of course, we start with our CFT game of the week, the top 5 tilt in Columbus. At the shoe, it is number 2 Ohio State and number 5 Indiana. Curtis Rourke will lead the Hoosiers into their first game as an underdog this season, and they're catching double digits despite being undefeated. Will Howard leads the Buckeyes into this matchup in Columbus. Joe, as you compare the quarterbacks entering today, you have told us already in our opening hour, our complete breakdown of this game, you are going to take the points with IU as the underdog to keep this game close. Just how good does Curtis Rourke need to be?
Well, again, I don't think he needs to get through the 225.5 because if they can run the football and shorten the game, Will Howard is on the sidelines. I think it's more important for Will Howard to get through the 250.5 to push tempo and really put the pressure on Indiana playing on the road. Indiana does a fantastic job. We've said it all year long, especially in the games in Bloomington, dictating the tempo, even the lowest scoring games. Think about the game against Michigan. They jump up 14-3 at the half, right? They need to make adjustments, though, in this game. Yeah. That is the one thing I will say. Curtis Rourke against Michigan had, $190, 200 yards in the first half, completely shut down. Right. They need to make adjustments in this game to pull the victory out, but it's more important for Howard, Kev, to get through the 250.5 today.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is Curtis Rourke has the Heisman number. Will Howard's arguably been better. And it's not that tough of an argument to make. I mean, their college football passer rating numbers are very, very similar. Howard has more passing touchdowns. He has 30 total touchdowns, which is comfortably more than that of Rourke. He's thrown the football more than him this season. He's got a better completion percentage than him so far this season. And again, a win here for Will Howard. Let's say he has a great game. Then you get to play the game against Michigan, which will have a lot of eyes on it. We know that. Then you get to go head-to-head against Dylan Gabriel again, where, Howard in that matchup threw 2 touchdowns, ran in another score, and had 326 yards. I still feel that the Heisman race has, interestingly enough, kind of played out how I thought, where, outlier statistical seasons would be rewarded, right? The Ollie Gordon camp, it just ended up being Genty, right? Kind of, you know what I mean? But if we are going to go, if we're doing at any point the quarterback on the best team, Howard at 300-1 on the national champion favorites is a preposterous number. If Rourke's going to be 30-1,
Yeah, absolutely. And Will Howard has been really good this year. The only game he has thrown for more than 260 was against Oregon. He threw for 326. But the efficiency in Big Ten play in the 7 games for the Bucs, never more than 10 incompletions for Will Howard. 74.6 completion percentage, 18 touchdowns to 4 INTs. 2 passing scores in all 7 conference games for Ohio State this season. Curtis Rourke has started 6 Big Ten games for IU. He has completed 5. He has thrown for multiple passing touchdowns in all 5 he has completed. That number of 1.5 today has a ton of plus money at plus 150 on the over. 3 passing scores in 4 of 5. Seemed as though, Joe, he was destined to get through that against Michigan. The offense stalled out in a big way in the second half. Indiana's rushing attack has not looked great in the last 2 weeks against Michigan State and against Michigan in their previous 2 games. Needs to be better today. Let's continue our quarterback comparison, looking at these huge matchups on this Week 13 Saturday slate. And as we look at the game in the Bronx, inside Yankee Stadium, it might actually be the legs of both quarterbacks where we start. Bryson Daly for Army, 88.5. Riley Leonard for Notre Dame, less than 2 bills in his passing yards, ever so slightly, 55.5 on the ground. Kev, you said one of your best bets on this Saturday slate. Bryson Daly over 88.5 rushing yards against the Irish. How come?
Yeah, well, because he's done it in every single game but the opener against Lehigh, and Notre Dame had their struggles against Blake Horvath. I think the interesting thing is actually both of these quarterbacks to find the end zone. Now, the status as favorites, the level of competition is relevant. Riley Leonard at minus 200, not a bad number. Again, certainly via college football standards, you could argue actually a great number. Yeah. Didn't score last week, hasn't had consecutive games without scoring. That's the first time he hasn't scored since week number 1, right? At Texas A&M. But again, his 13 rushing touchdowns pales in comparison to that of Daly, who has 21 scores on this season, Joe, and has only 1 game without a touchdown, has only 1 game without multiple touchdowns. I mean, minus 120 on Bryson Daly looks really, really nice.
Yeah, you could take multiple touchdowns, I think, with Daly today. I mean, if they're going to win because of Bryson Daly. Again, I think he gets potentially to $1.25, $1.30 on the ground. Again, he has to for that offense to have, obviously, consistency and score points against this front 7. The passing yards are interesting for Riley Leonard, okay? Yeah. And we talked about it last week, 22 of 33, 214. He's starting to come on in terms of the passing attack. In order to beat the triple option, he broke out against Navy. You got to do the same thing. You have to force tempo. I keep saying it's like a college basketball or an NBA game. Yeah. You want to jump out with that 20-0 run and force that team that plays half court like Virginia to run up and down the court and get out of their game plan. So we'll see. He's got to get through that. I think for Notre Dame to cover the line today, they got to get through. He's got to get to 2.25, 220.
163 or fewer for Leonard in the first 5 games in his Notre Dame career. 203 or more in 4 of the last 5. Let's get to a great quarterback matchup today in Kansas City. Jalen Daniels for Kansas and Shedeur Sanders on the other side for Colorado. Joe, the price, the prop, much heftier for that of Sanders. It's 330.5. Colorado's 7th best passing offense in the country. Huge matchup today. Yep. What do you expect from the aerial attack for the Buffaloes?
To hit their average, right? 350, 360, and I expect Shedeur to potentially put up a 400 spot. The reason why I say that is as good as Kansas has been, Jalen Daniels over the past couple of weeks still completing about 56% of his passes, right? Not as consistent as Shedeur. Give me the 400 for Shedeur today.
You guys know it, over the 2.5 passing touchdowns. My favorite prop we've got today here. I just think everything lines up narrative-wise, and then the opponent, for what they've allowed, couldn't be a better spot to see Shedeur Sanders throw it all over the field.
290 plus for Sanders in 6 of the 7 Big 12 games this season. The rest of the ranked teams in action in Week 13 next.
Chris Cyborg, 39 years of age. Larissa Pacheco, only 30. Cyborg 2 inches taller, equal measurement on the arm reach for these women. Slightly longer legs for Chris Cyborg. Touch of the gloves, and we are underway in our co-main events. Cauliflower.
No, it might be.
Oh!
Beautiful.
What a level.
Oh, big kick.
How did she take that? Shako just ate it.
Wow.
Measured and controlled in her breathing. Oh, nasty left hand snuck over the top for Cyborg. Jaco, she will literally and figuratively smell blood in the water. Oh, there's a guillotine.
Another beautiful takedown, but she put herself right in harm's way. That is tight.
Good short elbow there.
Very nice.
An overhand right there from Cyborg.
That was a solid right hand.
Needing some punches.
Watch the back of the head, Rick. Watch the back of the head. First deep breath I've seen Larissa take in this fight. Just about 10 seconds ago. Oh, nice takedown.
Rolls through onto an ankle, maybe. 15 seconds, and we're going to see some wildness. Yeah, of course
Yes, we are. Both women landed there. They'll swing away to the final bell here.
9-46. I'll have it for the winner by unanimous decision. And now the PFL Superfights Women's Featherweight World Champion, Chris Cyborg.
The legend adds to her legacy. Chris Cyborg.
The rest of the ranked teams in action on the second to final Saturday of the college football regular season. 4 Big 12 teams check into the college football playoff top 25. We have featured this huge Big 12 Saturday, middle of the afternoon, and those 3 teams already ranked. Now the fourth and final, that would be Iowa State. The Cyclones need to win out for the remainder of their 2 conference matchups and need some help. A loss from either Colorado or BYU to clinch a potential spot in the Big 12 championship game. Lisi guy, we go to Rice-Eccles. Salt Lake City tonight, where Utah has not been great. Well, not in Rice-Eccles, but just this season. The Utes have dropped 6 consecutive games. They have only covered once in that 6-game span. It was the Holy War 2 Saturdays ago against BYU. But this spread working back to Utah. 7.5 early this week, now 6.5 in favor of the Clones. How do you break down the matchup?
Well, again, I think the more consistent offense right now is Rocco Becht and Iowa State. I know they have 2 losses on the year, but they're still fighting for a potential Big 12 championship. We'll see how this plays out. But the biggest thing for me is I like the total here. I do lean to Iowa State. The line opened up, I believe, middle of the week. We were 7.5 Wednesday, and then they started to hit it down because Rice-Eccles is a very difficult place to play. Isaac Wilson taking over for Brandon Rhodes. He threw 3 interceptions last week. But again, I do like Iowa State. The biggest thing for me, guys, I think Iowa State pushes tempo, and because of that, I think we blow through the 41.5. Iowa State, 12 sacks on the year. So Wilson, when he does pass, should have multiple, time and seconds to throw and locate wide receivers. You got to open it up. I mean, Kyle Whittingham looking for bowl contention. He cares about that. I think Iowa State, but the over's the best play.
Yeah, here's the interesting thing. So I agree, but I'm not going to touch it. Just because this is now the 3rd straight game where I think they've hung what looks like a very light Utah total.
Yeah.
But the numbers are still the numbers, right? Like, it was about this number when they played BYU. Then I think we got 43.5 last week against Colorado. If that's what they believe these Utes numbers are, it's not way off, if you will, total math, essentially.
Right.
The number looks light, but they have for a few weeks now. I backed off respectfully because I think the Iowa State defense could still show up in a spot like this.
Utah over in 2 consecutive games. The Iowa State rushing defense, atrocious. Allowed 287 yards last week against Cincinnati despite winning by 3 scores. They're allowing more than $184 on the ground this year. Let's get to a Big Ten battle today in the Twin Cities. Minnesota plays host to number 4 Penn State. The Nittany Lions expected to win a football game. In the last virtually 3 years when that has happened, they are 30-1 straight up, 22-8-1 against the spread, and Kev here laying 11.5 points. Will it be a comfortable cruise to a victory for the Nittany Lions today?
I don't think so. The Golden Gophers are potentially going to be the best win on Penn State's resume if they get the job done. The key word there being if. I think Minnesota, with that loss to Rutgers, must have been looking ahead to this game here. Yeah. I think RU's been fine this season at home. You know, they themselves making sure they were able to get bowl eligible and things of that nature. But I think you are going to be getting Minnesota's best effort, whose defense this season, Lisi's really been figuring things out.
Yeah, I like Minnesota as well. Couple things that stand out for me. Extra week of preparation in terms of that I think they definitely set up for this. 16 interceptions, guys. 16 interceptions on the year, plus 12 in turnover margin as a team. Only giving up 119 rushing yards per game, $177 in terms of the back end. Going to be very difficult for this offense of Penn State to just chuck it all over the yard. And I still have concerns about Drew Aller. Hey, I watched Oxford. I'm rowing the boat outright over Penn State. Sweep the leg. Get him out. Sweep the leg.
Prior to the game in Piscataway against Rutgers, Minnesota had won 4 straight, covering in 5 in a row. Let's go quickly to Piscataway, where Rutgers hosts Illinois today. This line has been moving back and forth. The Illini were a favorite. The Scarlet Knights a favorite. I need Rutgers to win, Joe, to go over that preseason win total. Will the Scarlet Knights?
I think they will. I think they grind out a victory. I believe in Schiano. Defense is better, I believe, a little bit than Illinois. They grind it out. Not going to be easy, Ben, but you'll get the 7th win.
Game's in Jersey, so can't touch it, can't do anything with it, which is just always annoying to me. What I will say, and I want to make sure that everyone understands that this goes for 2 teams, Illinois and Missouri. I hope they lose out, make them play one another in a bowl. Those 2 teams have exemplified the power conference bias, but neither one of them. Now, Illinois actually has some sneaky, wins in there. Yeah. Missouri's an absolute clown show.
When Missouri has stepped up in competition, it has been bad, but both boosting resumes for their conference companions. We'll talk Boise State, Wyoming, and our bets for this weekend next.
Cyborg, 39 years of age. Larissa Pacheco, only 30. Cyborg 2 inches taller. Equal measurement on the arm reach for these women. Slightly longer legs for Chris Cyborg. Touch of the gloves, and we are underway in our co-main event. Cauliflower.
No, it might be.
Oh,
beautiful.
What a level. Oh,
big kick.
How did she take Pacheco just ate it.
Wow.
Measured and controlled in her breathing. Oh, nasty left hand snuck over the top for Cyborg. Pacheco, she will literally and figuratively smell blood in the water. Oh, there's a guillotine!
Another beautiful takedown, but she put herself right in harm's way. That is tight.
Good short elbow there.
Very nice.
Oh, an overhand right there from Cyborg.
That was a solid right hand.
Needing some punches.
Watch the back of the head, Chris. Watch the back of the head. First deep breath I've seen Larissa take in this fight. Just about 10 seconds ago. Oh, nice takedown.
Rolls through onto an ankle, maybe. 15 seconds, and we're going to see some wildness. Yeah, of course
yes, we are. Both women landed there. They'll swing away to the final bell here.
9-46, I'll have it for the winner by unanimous decision. And now the PFL Superfights Women's Featherweight World Champion, Chris Cyborg.
The legend adds to her legacy. Chris Cyborg.
We are just about half an hour away from the start of this Week 13 Saturday slate in some great games at noon Eastern time. So any game that we mention that kicks at noon, make sure you get those bets in. We welcome you back to college football today for our big games around the country, including the top 5 tilt at noon, Indiana and Ohio State, those big game best bets coming up shortly. But we start with the mastermind and his Week 13 Saturday slate betting card. It is robust. Lisi, your first 3 picks on this Week 13 Saturday.
Yeah, so I'll take the SEC battle in the swamp. Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss coming out of a bye week. They did knock off Georgia a couple weeks ago, playing a red-hot Florida team that did get the victory over LSU last week. Now they're catching 12.5. Line open up at 10.5. That's when I put the pick in, but I still like Ole Miss to cover this line. I think they have way too much offense, more experienced quarterback, and the defense to me is the difference to force turnovers against Lagway. 72 rushing yards allowed on the ground, 46 total sacks. I think they get after it, and I do believe, guys, that we sailed through this total. I think this similarly looks like the game against Arkansas. Ole Miss had a defensive effort, mobile quarterback. They contained Taylor Green and put up a 35 spot in the first half. So give me Ole Miss minus the 12.5 up today, and then over the 55.5 in terms of the total. And then I really like Virginia. I said the 9.5. It's up to 10.5. I don't care. I booked it at 9.5 a couple days ago. I believe they can win this ball game outright, fighting for bowl contention. I love Tony Elliott playing at home. Defense has stepped up as well at home. Went toe-to-toe with Louisville. I think they're live today. Disregard the Michigan pick. Typo, don't like Michigan, actually would lean the other side with Northwestern.
Who exactly is at fault? You'll never know. Lisi, guys, sends a lot of picks each and every week for week number 13. I'll pick it up with the Virginia and SMU game. I actually look at Brashard Smith. That's the running back for SMU, over 98.5 rushing yards. That number on the rise, north of 100 on this Saturday morning. He has rushed for at least 117 yards in 3 consecutive games for the Mustangs. They have been a really solid ground attack this year. 6 total touchdowns for Brashard Smith in those last 3 games for SMU. In Virginia last week, allowed more than 217 yards to Notre Dame. They allow more than 143 on the ground so far this season. Oftentimes this year, I have found it difficult to find edges in the prop market for what the odds makers are handing out in college football. As they get sharper in those player props, it's been difficult to find even at the top of the market, like Brashard Smith, over 98.5 rushing yards for SMU today. Let me go to my other rushing yards prop on this Saturday. Really intriguing stuff for Iowa on the road today against Maryland. 6.5-point spread earlier in the week. Came down to 3.5, now at 4.5. You know the Terrapins, not great in Big Ten competition. Iowa generally is. But Brendan Sullivan, the Hawkeyes quarterback, out for the year. Cade McNamara, the former Michigan quarterback, not able to play in this game. Some interesting things happening in that Hawkeyes facility, but Cade McNamara in concussion protocol, unable to go. So they turn to a walk-on, Jackson Stratton, which means they turn to Caleb Johnson and let the guy run loose today. He has had 5 games this year with at least 21 carries. He has rushed for more than 135 yards in all 5 of those games. Maryland allows more than 115 yards on the ground. Iowa has played 6 teams that allow more than 115 yards on the ground. In 5 of those 6, KJ has had at least 21 attempts. I expect a heavy dosage of Caleb Johnson, over 125.5. And Kev, to your point about Ashton Genty earlier in the show, I think it's a big day for him against a Wyoming team that allows more than 201 yards on the ground, which means I think Boise State names their number. Team total working against me ever so slightly. Still like it over 38, 39.5. I had it at 40.5 earlier in the week. Interestingly enough, The Pokes have not been a great team this year in Wyoming, despite one of us picking them to go for the loot in the opening weekend of the year against Arizona State. That was me. They got absolutely smashed. Wyoming has played two teams this year that average more than 200 yards per game on the ground, Air Force and New Mexico. Wyoming actually the underdog in both of those games. They won outright in both. Not expecting an outright win against Boise, but I do think we see some points. Broncos over their team total. Let's go back to Lisi Guy. We'll end with you. Lisi Guy, finish out your betting card outside of the big games for Week 13.
Yeah, Minnesota. We talked about it in previous segment. I think they're live on the money line. I love them plus the 11.5 today. Last two games in the series in Minneapolis, they knocked off Penn State outright, so I think they're live today. Nebraska minus the 1.5, down from 2.5. If you're ever going to become bowl eligible over the past couple of seasons, this is it. You potentially have a team on letdown in terms of Wisconsin going toe-to-toe with Oregon. I'm laying the 1.5 with Nebraska. Pittsburgh and Louisville. This line opened up at 58.5 down to 57.5. Nate Yarnell throws for 350-plus last week in a loss to Clemson. And then you had Tyler Shuck and Louisville lose outright 38-35 to Stanford. Give me points over the 57.5 a little bit later today. And then I told you, this is it. LSU, go big or go home. You can't smash Diego Pavia in Baton Rouge by more than 7.5 points. You don't deserve to be coaching in Baton Rouge, Brian Kelly. Win it big later tonight.
How about that? A lot of juice out there.
A lot of juice. A lot of heat coming off that side. I like it as well.
I'll just say you mentioned the Boise team total.
Yeah.
For me, I'm taking the big swing on Genti for man, there's a 70-1 number on him to break the single-game record at 428. If he does that, he will be the Heisman favorite. But I think he can. I truly believe he can get to 300 yards. I truly, truly believe that. He's going up against a team that is bottom 5 in all of college football, yards per carry. Yeah. New Mexico and Dampier with the running back duo ran for over 400 yards on that team. And if you are Boise, look, I know you've had a lot of debates in the morning with DRS. You go get him his Heisman.
For sure.
Go get him his Heisman.
They are doing that now, by the way. 31 carries in his last 5 at least.
And I think if that's the workload I'm getting, I think there's a chance he can average 10 yards a carry in this game here and get through the 300 at 8-1. What's on the card outside of our big game best bets is Damian Martinez over 77.5, which is like 10.5 compared to what I'm talking about for Ashton Genti. Martinez, since the last bye week this team had in a 4-game window, 7.3 yards per carry. The prior 6 games, 4.4. That 7.3 is more like it. The guy they thought they were getting out of Corvallis, off of another bye week here against a rush defense that has been beaten up by the best in college football, like Ole Miss, whose lead back went for $130. Clemson's lead back went for 100 as well. Expect a similar situation for Martinez. Heck, last week, Amarion Hampton, I think, still putting yardage up against the Demon Deacons defense there. I like Damian Martinez over the 77.5. Speaking of Oregon State, plus 11.5, their Super Bowl today in the Pac-12 championship game in their building. This is double the number UNLV laid here. We are getting bottom of the barrel on Oregon State, and we're looking to fire away here against a Washington State team whose big dreams died last week in that loss that they had against New Mexico. I think Oregon State's live in this football game. 11.5, way too many for the Pac-12 championship game there. Virginia catching 10 and a hook. Spread math will let you know that this thing is way too tall. Should be under double digits, and Tony Elliott has been a cover machine. Also, SMU has been flirting with it more than people realize. That defense is not strong. The only teams, in fact, this year that they've held under 24 points, Stanford, Houston Christian, and the worst of the bunch, Florida State. If that means Virginia's getting 24 on the board, it means they're live, and it means they cover that 10.5. And then very simply, Nebraska to win this game, minus 113. I am not kidding. I hope you didn't actually lay 1.5. Make sure you play this money line. This team is dumb. This team is
took them on the money line
good.
Earlier in the week.
Yeah, no, but you don't like Lisi, the world where Matt Rule gets this win and leaves you sitting there on 28-27 final.
No doubt.
I don't want that to happen to you here. This is, again, the worst loss Nebraska has this season, in my opinion, in terms of opponent. At home against UCLA. Why? Because they gave it all against Ohio State, had nothing left. That's Wisconsin following the Oregon game. Nebraska takes advantage at home.
Big game best bets on CFT up next.
Chris Cyborg, 39 years of age. Larissa Pacheco, only 30. Cyborg 2 inches taller. Equal measurement on the arm reach for these women. Slightly longer legs for Chris Cyborg. Touch of the gloves, and we are underway in our co-main events. Cauliflower.
I don't know, it might be
What
beautiful.
a level. Oh,
Big kick.
How did she take Pacheco just ate it.
Wow.
Measured and controlled in her breathing. Oh, nasty left hand snuck over the top for Cyborg. Pacheco. She will literally and figuratively smell blood in the water. Oh, there's a guillotine.
Another beautiful takedown, but she put herself right in harm's way. That is tight.
Good short elbow there.
Very nice.
Oh, an overhand right there from Cyborg.
That was a solid right hand.
Needing some punches.
Watch the back of the head, Rick. Watch the back of the head. First deep breath I've seen Larissa take in this fight. Just about 10 seconds ago. Oh, nice takedown.
Rolls through onto an ankle, maybe. 15 seconds, and we're going to see some wildness. Yeah, of course
Yes,
we are.
Both women landed there. They'll swing away to the final bell here.
9-46, I'll have it for the winner by unanimous decision. And now the PFL Superfights Women's Featherweight World Champion, Chris Cyborg!
The legend adds to her legacy. Chris Cyborg.
We are about 15 minutes away from the start of week number 13 and our second to final Saturday of this 2024 college football regular season.
And we're about, 45 minutes away from the kickoff of Indiana-Ohio State?
Exactly. There might be a little bit of time, but that game is right at noon Eastern time. So although it is our college football today game of the week, we give you our big game best bets for the battle in Columbus right here, right now. It is a top 5 tilt yet with a double-digit spread. Number 2, Ohio State at home in the Horseshoe. A 10.5-point favorite against number 5 and undefeated 10-0 Indiana. Lisi Guy, the first time in program history, in 137 seasons, IU has ever won 10 football games in a year, and they've done it in 10 games. Ohio State's only blemish against Oregon, and they have looked really solid against other Big Ten competition. It is a double-digit spread for a top 5 tilt. Where do you begin? What's the play?
Well, I think it's Indiana's ability to really contain Will Howard and that passing attack. I believe in the secondary. I believe in Kurt Cignetti. They've done a fantastic job. I think in order for Indiana to win, got to be under the 52.5. But I like them plus the 10.5. The fact that McLaughlin's out of that offensive line for Ohio State, to me, is going to be a major factor. Think they could put pressure. 46 total sacks as a unit. I think they get it after it today.
Get me a pina colada. The big man's on an island. Would you look at that? I like Ohio State quite a bit here today. This is one of those numbers. The books wanted it to be 14, but these two wouldn't stop clicking on the Hoosiers. So the number just drops.
17 bets on that.
And that 14, quite frankly, is what would make sense here with how we've seen IU be treated against the number and Ohio State be treated against the number. This is the favorites to win the national championship at home against an Indiana team whose toughest opponent might be the Maryland Terrapins. Unless Derek Queen was playing in that game, I got no respect for that opponent here. It's all Buckeyes, baby.
For me, it's Indiana. And it's Indiana starting fast, as they have in basically every single game this year. IU plus 7.5 in the first half, because if the Hoosiers keep this game in margin, it's got to start early and often. Indiana has trailed for just about 22 total minutes all season long, and it happened just 3 weeks ago in their 9th game of the year for the first ever time. Ohio State has been slightly slow to start throughout this season. Down by double digits in Happy Valley. Trailed against Oregon at the break. Even last week, Northwestern had a 7-0 lead early in the second quarter at Wrigley Field. The matchup to me is the red zone. Indiana, 56 red zone attempts. That's tied for the most in the country alongside Tulane. And they have 55 red zone scores, 53 rather, 46 of them red zone touchdowns. Ohio State has only allowed 23 red zone trips this year. That's tied for the 5th fewest in college football. Only 7 red zone touchdowns. That is the fewest in CFB. I actually disagree slightly. If Indiana wins this game, they need to pressure with that offense and going over that total of 52 and a half.
They're chasing their tails over there. They agree, they disagree. What do you want to say? You've been smiling.
No, I'm waiting.
Well, listen, we're in different spots. So let me ask you, right?
Yeah.
On Ohio State, minus 10.5, there is going to be a lot of swift reactions to this game if Indiana does not keep it close.
Yeah.
If IU does, but Ohio State wins, a Hoosiers cover, does that legitimize the rest of the resume for Indiana?
I think it shows that then they are a team deserving to be in the playoff, right? If there are moments in this game where the result feels in doubt beyond the opening quarter or really even the opening half, I think that is incredibly important here for Indiana because truly, like, when we say it's the 106th schedule, that sounds not great. As I tried to put into perspective earlier, there are only 3 teams within the Big Ten whose strength of schedule is not top 50. The next closest is Minnesota, who still has a top 75 strength of schedule. What IU has gone up against is insane to imagine. It happens. You play who's in front of you. That's what they do today. And I think with the playoff, we want to get teams in there that we think, hey, that team can win a title. Yeah. If they lose by 24 today, you won't feel that's true of Indiana anymore.
Absolutely, and I'll equate it to Penn State. Penn State's in the top 5 because they lost to Ohio State by 7, right, in their house. So if you go
Didn't cover in that game though.
But it's still a 1-score game though. But I'm just saying the perception is they had the football, they had an opportunity. Right. Indiana goes in and they lose by, let's say, 7 or 8 or even 10, and they still cover the 10.5 in Columbus, which is a better effort.
I would agree. And listen, if it's competitive, not a backdoor down by 3 scores late in that fourth quarter, I think that shows a lot about Indiana. To your point, in the expansion of the college football playoff, we wanted to make it more equal, right? We wanted to have teams have a seat at the table to contend for a national championship. And a lot of us wanted the results on the field to dictate that college football playoff race. Indiana has that opportunity today. Enough of the metrics talk. Go out there and play well in a football game. Another undefeated team is a double-digit dog today inside Yankee Stadium in the Bronx. It's number 19 Army, catching more than 2 touchdowns against 6th-ranked Notre Dame. The Irish this year, Kev, 7-0-1 against the spread against non-MAC teams, and they've been rolling. Army plays in the American. But can the undefeated Black Knights keep this game close?
I think they can. I certainly think, regardless of whether they do or not, Daly puts 100 yards on the ground because he's done it in 7 in a row with 125-plus in 5 out of the 7. We saw Horvath get wild against ND, hit a huge home run in that game, and we know Daly has a similar ability with one of the biggest a Ashton Genty-level workload this year, 36 carries last week, a season high off of an injury. The reps will be there. I think Daly gets through the numbers.
It's the defense. 10 points allowed for Army, 38% third down defense, and 82 rushing yards allowed. That keeps them in it. I like them plus the 14.5. I think they actually win the ball game outright. We stood up here a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. Notre Dame are frauds. Don't even deserve to be in the top 5. Army, out. Let's go outright. I'm taking the Cadets. I'm all in.
I love this guy. Riley Leonard over 1.5 passing touchdowns, threw for 2 against the Naval Academy. 3 touchdowns to only 2 INTs in the first 5 games of the year for the Irish. 9 touchdowns to 2 picks in the last 5. It's been much better through the air. And to Joe's point, Army's the 3rd best rushing defense in the country. The rest of the big games on this Saturday and our best bets next.
Chris Cyborg, 39 years of age. Larissa Pacheco, only 30. Cyborg 2 inches taller. Equal measurement on the arm reach for these women. Slightly longer legs for Chris Cyborg. Touch of the gloves, and we are underway in our co-main event. Cauliflower.
No, it might be.
Oh!
Beautiful.
What a level. Oh!
Big kick.
How did she take Pacheco just ate it?
Wow.
Measured and controlled in her breathing. Oh, nasty left hand snuck over the top for Cyborg. Pacheco, she will literally and figuratively smell blood in the water. Oh, there's a guillotine!
Another beautiful takedown, but she put herself right in harm's way. That is tight.
Good short elbow there.
Very nice.
Oh, an overhand right there from Cyborg.
That was a solid right hand.
Needing some punches.
Watch the back of the head, Chris. Watch the back of the head. First deep breath I've seen Larissa take in this fight. Just about 10 seconds ago. Oh, nice takedown.
Rolls through onto an ankle, maybe. 15 seconds, and we're going to see some wildness. Yeah, of course
Yes,
we
we
are.
are. Both women landed there. They'll swing away to the final bell here.
9-46. I'll have it for the winner by unanimous decision. And now the PFL Superfights Women's Featherweight World Champion, Chris Cyborg.
The legend adds to her legacy. Chris Cyborg.
The rest of our big game best bets on this week 13 Saturday, the second to last of the college football regular season. We're having fun here today as we close out college football today, just about 5 minutes away from the opening kicks on this Saturday. We'll have dual kicks, simultaneous action that could dictate the Big 12 in a conference championship race today. In one it's Kansas in Kansas City hosting Colorado. In the other, in Tempe, Arizona State and BYU. We'll get to that in just a matter of moments. Colorado is 8-2. CU is the odds-on favorite at -110 now to win a Big 12 title in year number 2 of the prime era in Boulder. In Kev, they're a road favorite today in Arrowhead against the Kansas team in the last month that is covered in 4 straight, won 3 of 4 outright in the last 2, playing spoiler in Big 12 competition. How do you see the game in Arrowhead?
Just one more time. Where are they?
They're at Arrowhead Stadium, GEHA Field.
And now, who plays their home games there in the NFL season?
That would be the 2-time reigning Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs.
And who's their quarterback?
That would be Patrick Mahomes.
Now, if you don't think Shedeur Sanders is fired up, man, you want another narrative to throw on top of it. They just got Julian Lewis to commit. You think they want to show Julian Lewis anything other than 3 passing tuds? You got to be kidding me. How about some non-narrative and some reality here? 4 teams have scored 4 more touchdowns against Kansas, 30-plus, which today's CU's team total is over 30. 3 of those 4 quarterbacks, 3-plus passing touchdowns. And Garrett Green, the exception, threw 2, which for him is like throwing 5. So quite frankly, we've seen this come in consistently. And Shedeur Sanders in a spot here for their biggest game of the season, because next week, my goodness, Oklahoma State. I'm already sizzling that game. I really do believe that Sanders today, its narrative, its opponent, 14 of the last 18 touchdowns allowed by Kansas have been through the air. It is the perfect spot for Sanders to throw it all over.
I like Colorado. They've won 4 straight. We talked about 19.2 points per game, average margin of victory. Again, they're averaging 330, 340 through the air. Much complete and better passing attack. And think about when Kansas faced Rocco Beck. They still put up 38 points on that secondary. So you're going to get me in on the 400. But but I really like Colorado. You're getting the extra point. We saw 2.5s, 3.5s, back down to 2.5. I'm not buying in that Kansas is all of a sudden complete. They've been doing it with defense as well, Colorado. They get it done, and I'll lay the number today.
This Jayhawks team in the last 4 weeks has looked like the team we expected for the last 2 years. So Kansas is playing really good football. With that being said, Colorado -2.5. They have covered in all 7 Big 12 games this year. Their last 3 as a favorite. Only been favored 10 times with Deion Sanders as the head man. They are now 6-3-1 against the spread. Shedeur Sanders and the Buffaloes as a whole matching the moment as of late. The deserved Big 12 championship favorites. Who might they see in that Big 12 title game? Could it be BYU or might it be Arizona State? The Sun Devils at home today in Tempe, laying 3.5 points against the Cougars team, Joe, that dropped its only game of the year a week ago at home against KU. They're catching 3.5. They've won all 4 games, booked as a dog outright this year. Will it be a 5th today against the Sun Devils?
Yeah, I don't believe so. I think Arizona State is the side. They've won 3 straight by 11.6 points per game. I like Sam Levitt, but I like Cam Scatterbo as well, and I buy into the Arizona State defense, and Kenny Dillingham has done a fantastic job this year. I'm laying it with Arizona State.
Give me LeBron James Martin here. What else could that LJ stand for? 61-plus rush yards here. An ASU rush defense that has been held up by two terrible offenses they played in the opening 2 weeks. This team in Big 12 play, non-Ollie Gordon division, is allowing 113 yards to lead backs, just lead backs. Yeah. LJ Martin has a big game here.
Now I need to know what LJ stands for. Cam Scatterbo, over 89.5 rushing yards, one of the best two-way backs that you will see through the air or on the ground. BYU, second best scoring defense in the Big 12, but they allow nearly 140 yards per game on the ground. That's where I think ASU focuses, at least 90 rushing yards for Cam Scatterbo. Next weekend, a huge one, the Iron Bowl for Alabama. So is tonight in Norman a look-ahead spot? The odds makers say not so much. The betting public might disagree. Kev, 2-touchdown spread in favor of the Crimson Tide. How do you break it down?
I think Oklahoma's live here. One of the 20 best defenses in college football, can keep Alabama at bay, off of a bye as well. Venables to get the biggest win, I think, so far since he's been the head coach of Oklahoma. Tonight will put a scare into the Crimson Tide.
Absolutely. Extra week of preparation is the difference. Only giving up 109 rushing yards per game. They can limit Milroe in the rushing attack.
I'm going to be very honest. I don't have a great feel for this game. Alabama's defense improving. To your point about Oklahoma, a lot of burden on the Sooners. They've been good, under 46.5. He is Kevin Walsh. He is Joe Lisi. I am Ben Stevens. Week number 13 starts right now.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than game time decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Carlos Alcaraz has won the last 2 Grand Slam titles at the French Open on the clay and at Wimbledon earlier this summer. He enters as the favorite.
You have a bunch of depth there. Francis Tiafoe, Ben Shelton. They will likely play in round 3. The winner would play Djokovic, most likely, which would be an incredible match. I like Ben Shelton as a sleeper. If Djokovic is hurt, you never know. I think Shelton's actually the guy that gets hot. The conditions favor him.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like